Alright, gang, here it is, my final analysis on this triple fire blaster build. Carnelian Flare, here she is. If you recall, this started as a post I read about on the Homecoming forum by Snarky, a triple fire project that he had put a build out there for. Um, that was soon followed by another post by another user named Chelsea, who posted a different but similar build. And for me, I thought the concept of triple fire was really interesting. I've never played one before. I know the story. The rumor is, hey, it's a super high damage because fire is, the damage king of sets that's out there. So I found it an interesting concept. And I went ahead and picked Chelsea's build because it was a little bit cheaper. Actually, probably a lot cheaper than Snarky's build was, and I didn't want to, take on a level 50 and spend a billion influence or whatever. I think Snarky's build probably estimated to be about half a billion, if not more. Chelsea's build, this thing turned out to, well, it didn't cost me this much, but I estimated about 250 million. I had a bunch of the stuff I needed in my bins in my base. This is the build that she has right here. So everything is attuned. Most of the stuff, I a bunch of it in the base, and then of course I have a Sugar Daddy level 50 farmer build, and I can send money and was able to PL this character up. So it really wasn't that big of an issue, but I didn't want to go Snarky's route with the super expensive build. Plus, I thought Chelsea's build was interesting because a big focus for it was the idea of high defense and high damage at the same time. Snarky's I felt was mostly damage and procs, um, which is fine. So anything I'm going to say today is nothing. I'm not casting aspersions on anybody. I'm not going to throw shade at anybody. I chose Chelsea's build. I went with it. Even I may throw criticisms out there. It's not a criticism of Chelsea or Snarky or anybody else. It's just my interpretation of what this build can do or can't do, what was fun, what wasn't, where I felt there were problems and things that I would suggest to fix those problems. So everything, is my own opinion here. It's based upon playing this character numerous times from, DFB level, 2 stuff all the way up to, incarnate kind of stuff. Um, I've played it on teams, I've played it solo, I've run Task Force, Trial, whatever. I've done all kinds of stuff. I didn't team with anybody I knew. Everything was, pickup groups, so that didn't influence, anything. I didn't have anybody out there helping me, that sort of stuff. But anyway, so I'm going to break down my final analysis here, my review, if you will. And again, this is not a review of the posters, the people who are running this. It's a review of the build, and based upon how I played it. But I'm going to break this down into basic pros and cons. What was good, what was bad. Then I'm going to break down the level range play, like low level, mid level, high level, and then end game. Then I want to take a deep dive on some of the things that I felt were good, some of the things that were not good, and that then will tailspin into changes I would suggest to this build, and I'm planning on actually making, and why I would do that, and why I think it's going to be a better build once it's done. And then wrap this all up with the big money question, which is, hey, would you keep playing this thing? Yes or no? Because you know what? If you're going to go ahead and make a build and it's fun, you're going to play it. If it's not fun, then you sort of wasted your time. And you could have done something different. So I'll kind of answer that question. But let's get into this. So for pros and cons, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to mids. There we go. Put that up on the big screen. As far as pros and cons go, pros. Hey, if you're looking for a straightforward blaster who does damage, this is your build. It's fire. It's fire, fire, fire. You know, that's what it does. It burns stuff. So very straightforward. You don't have to think about too much about positioning or you got to control something or line of sight. It's no, you just burn stuff. You can dive in there. You can stand back, whatever you want. Very straightforward. Another pro, it's a very early bloomer. If you take a look here, you're getting Fireball at level 2, Rain of Fire at level 6, Fire Sword Circle at level 10. Those are three of your bread and butter AoEs to do mass damage, and you're having them by level 10. That's crazy. The other big important thing is it does lots of damage. Duh, it's fire. I mean, all these powers are just roasting things. And then when you throw in your incarnates, like musculature and assault down here, forget about it. Okay, it's doing tons of damage. I was absolutely obliterating maps when I was doing my solo runs with incarnate stuff. It's crazy. And even so, you still have lots of damage early because of those AoEs. The other pro I felt was the high defense that Chelsea's build put together. And if you look here, your range defense is 48.23%. You know, it's really hard to be hit with that kind of defense. Melee defense is 22.6. So even if you do get hit, look at your smash lethal resistance, 72%. Your fire's like 32%. So you're able to, get missed a lot. And then if you do get hit, some of the most common damage types, smash lethal fire, you're not taking that much damage anyway. So those would be like the four big things I thought this build does very well. On the con side of stuff, this isn't necessarily the build's problem. The lack of mez protection. Obviously, all blasters don't have mez protection. All you do have is defiance. And all Defiance lets you do is use your tier 1 and tier 2 blasts and your tier 1 manipulation. So in this case, you could use Flares and Fire Blast or Ring of Fire while you're mezzed, while you're under control, you're slept, held, stunned, whatever. This kind of gets into one of my sub cons is because you don't have flares in this build, you're actually reduced down to Fire Blast and Ring of Fire. That's all you had. And I'm going to talk about Ring of Fire in a second. But those two, if you got controlled somehow, it really wasn't a good defense whatsoever. The only two other things that were being used to give this build any sort of mez protection was Tough has the Aegis Psionic Status Resistance proc in it, which is nice, but it's not going to do that much good. The one thing that actually I think was your best mez protection was actually the Blaster ATO Superior Defiant Barrage Recharge / plus status resistance. So when this thing fires, you got status protection. I don't know how long it lasts. I think it's like 10 seconds or something like that. So for about 10 seconds, you're immune to control. I don't know if completely immune, but I don't know, whatever the magnitude is, you have protection. The problem with it, of course, is you have to go and hit in melee, which is generally when you're going to get a lot of attention as you're diving into a group. They're shooting you, slashing at you. So it's sort of a roll the dice whether you hit and get this to proc and fire before you get controlled by something. So just no mez protection. So break freeze, that was the main thing. I had to carry a bunch of them, especially in the later game. Another con was, speaking of late game, was the high endurance cost of the build. Once you got into the upper 30s, low 40s, 50, pre-incarnates, it was an endurance hog. You just look at, and even an early game, before you get into decent slotting, you've got some really heavy hitting powers. So early game, you're throwing out Fireball, which has an end cost of 9.51. Sorry, 15 if it's unslotted, right? Which you say, oh, you're not going to unslot it. But if you're actually leveling this character up and you first get Fireball, You don't have slot. You have one slot in it, and it's probably going to be accuracy. So yeah, that will cost you 15. Rain of Fire. That's cost. That power's cost is 26 unslotted. That's huge, right? 15, 26. We're already at 41 of our endurance. And then Fire Sword Circle, your other big boy, that's 18.5. So you add those all up, you're like 60% of your endurance just with those three attacks. And you have them because you have by level 10. So you're using them. So, but you're burning through. So imagine, you go in and your first attack chain, you're throwing those three out. You've already used all your endurance because you've also thrown a fire blast in there, maybe a fire sword. So you just blew through your blue bar. That's a problem. It was a problem. So early, you have these big heavy hitters that are unslotted. Now, I didn't notice that much because I was playing an Exemplard level 50. So even though I only had level 10 powers, like when I was running the Death from Below trial, my Fire Sword Circle, Rain of Fire, and Fireball were 6 slotted with these attuned enhancements. So I was benefiting from sort of cheating the system. If you're doing like an actual level up and we're at level 10, you don't have all these IOs. You might even have just SOs if you can afford it. So definitely expensive on the endurance side early. And then the late game, similar because you've got a lot of toggles you bring online: hot feet, weave, fire shield, hover. That's 4 more toggles that you're dropping over here. So a lot more endurance per second is going out than is coming in. So high endurance is a problem with the build. Um, Another problem is kind of is the other edge of the sword with the early blooming. This build doesn't mature. You've already got all your main goodies by your early 30s. So, by the time you get, Inferno, throw in Burn Patch, you've got everything you need. The rest of the stuff in the late 30s, early 40s up till you hit level 50 is really not changing your character at all. Right? I mean, yeah, you're getting some more defenses over here, but you could honestly stop taking or using any of these powers up here and still do that damage output, burn them all down type build. Because hot feet, I'll get to that in a second. That's not doing much. Yeah, you got a fire shield. That's great. You got weave. Okay. Bonfire is the only one really in here that is a contributor. That's sort of a game changing power. But the problem with it, bonfire here, is it's only one slotted. So the recharge in that was bad. It's normally on a 2-minute recharge. I think it's down like a minute recharge with all the various slotting you got here. Um, you know, it's not that great. I'd like to have that, 40 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever. Bring that even faster on the recharge side of things, because all it has is the knockdown to knockback to knockdown proc in there. The other one, of course, is hover, is very useful, at least in my game. But that's your last thing you're taking. So it's by the time you get this, it's like, well, great. So anyway, that's one problem I felt. The other thing is kind of, again, double-edged sword. This does what it does. It does fire damage and does lots of it, which makes it a one-trick pony. What else does this build do? Right? You throw out fire, you throw out damage, and stuff dies. Now maybe, hey, maybe that's all you need, right? But sort of on a team, you know, uh, everybody's throwing out damage. So you're throwing out what? More damage? What do you really bring into a team um, that another blaster or corruptor or something like that can't do? So you really aren't doing anything on your team. Bonfire is probably the only useful power out of all of these that the team is going to benefit from. Everything else is just you're blasting and burning things down. But again, hey, if that's what you wanted to do, then that's perfect, right? All right, those are kind of the two sides of the story. Now, if you break this down, into level range, I think there was a really fun chunk of levels, and then there was a not so fun chunk of levels bookending. The lower level game, I'm gonna call from levels 1 to 17, was kind of It seems exciting on paper, but it really isn't. So if you look, you got Fire Blast, Ring of Fire, Fireball, Fire Sword, Rain of Fire, Fly, Fire Sword, Circle, Aim, Combat Jumping, Build Up. Okay? Now, on paper, this looks great. Fireball, Rain of Fire, Fire Sword, Circle, you get all this damage. But again, go back to what I was saying. Those are all extremely endurance heavy powers. And if you're playing this as a raw, level 2, 5, 10, 15, whatever, you can't afford to be throwing out all those powers. The recharge is long on a couple of them. Like Rain of Fire's recharge is 60 seconds normally, right? You don't have the endurance, okay? So great on paper, you have all this AoE damage you throw out, but you can't actually throw it out because you don't have the endurance or the recharge on it. So that was actually slowing this build down. The other thing that I felt was lacking in the early game was just a single target attack chain. You've got Fire Blast at 1, Ring of Fire at 1, and then Fire Sword at 4. Those are your 3 single target attacks. That's not a chain, okay? A chain is pow, 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 hit, hit, hit. Fire Blast is great. Ring of Fire is terrible. And it's not because of the DOT or whatever else. It's kind of a slowish burning power. But the real problem with Ring of Fire is that its range is 20 feet shorter than your other blasts. So you're sitting here with Fire Blast, Flares, Blaze, whatever, Blazing Bolt, all of those are 80 plus. So Ring of Fire, whenever you want to include it in your chain of attack, you have to either move closer if you weren't close enough, or wait for it to kind of like burn the person down. It's terrible. It doesn't help with your attack chain. And then Fire Sword is great as far as damage goes, but as an attack chain, it means you have to have moved into melee to use it. In early game, you'd have minimal defenses, so charging into melee range at this level is essentially a suicide. Because all you have is combat jumping and whatever your sets currently have. And again, my sets do have some, bonuses, defense and stuff, but that's because I was level 50, I haven't 6-slotted a tune, etc. If you were actually level 15, you're not gonna have all these slots and all these set bonuses. So diving in into melee to take advantage of Fire Sword, Fire Sword Circle, you're not doing it. Okay, well, you're not gonna do it for long, you should be dead. Um, so that's definitely an issue that needs to be fixed. Something else needs to be happening down here, at least as a ranged attack. So I'll get to that in a minute as well. Then, once you get into level 18, that is when this build gets fun. Because once you hit level 18, you got Blaze. Now I've got at least a 1-2 punch. Fire Blast, Blaze, pow, 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 pow. They're both pretty quick animating. They both do some decent damage. I can live with pow pow and then throw a ring of fire out there. Okay. Then it gets even better because you bring Cauterizing Aura online, and this helps with your endurance problem because you're getting recovery with the Cauterizing Aura. And if you throw in the Numinous regen recovery when that thing hits, that's giving you more. Plus, it's giving you some more defense, not defense, but you're getting healing, little ticks of healing, plus the regen from the Numinous. You start combining that with your stamina and your health slotting, you're increasing your survivability and your attack ability because you have more endurance right there. Then it gets a little bit slow-ish because you bring Hasten, which is fine because it brings you more attacks faster, but it also kind of counteracts itself with the endurance problem because now you're firing faster, you're consuming your energy faster, and then Hasten has that endurance crash when it ends. So it kind of makes it a little bit risky to have it. And then boxing, boring, right? But then 26, you get Blazing Bolt. 28, you could consume. 30, now you have Tough. You get, okay, now I'm able to get into more melee scraps. Inferno at 32, forget about it. Boom. Burn Patch at 35. Scorched Earth Policy. So by the time you hit 35, you've got everything you needed. I mean, this is like uber damage build all the way up to 35. So that range for me was fun. That 18 to 35, lots of powers, lots of options, lots of attacks. My endurance really wasn't an issue anymore, right? It was fun. Survivability is pretty solid, especially if you have these things six slotted and you've got all the set bonuses. Again, that's if you're leveling down as a level 50. Leveling up would be a little bit of a different story. And then the last, well, not the last, but the late game is when it kind of was boring because at this point, like I said, I have pretty much everything I want by level 35. 38 hot feet, you're thinking, wow, this is great. I got another damaging aura. I can do even more damage. But I was being mezzed and detoggled so many times. Hot feet was, I don't want to say useless, but it wasn't earning its keep. Plus, I have to be in melee to use it, which depending on what enemy I'm fighting, I might want to be standing back. So hot feet on its own is not, again, on paper, it looks great. Hey, damage, big aura. But in practice, Mez just keeps shutting it off. And then when you combine that with hover later, which is your 49 pick, it was a terrible combination. You're hovering, you get detoggled. Oh, I gotta land, I gotta turn on hot feet again. Then I gotta go back up with hover again. It's this constant back and forth. And then in those scenarios where you get mez multiple times in a row, that sucks. So break freeze were required just to kind of keep hot feet on consistently, which is kind of silly. Weave, whatever weave. Thing here with weave is, yeah, it gives you more defense. Man, I just sunk 6 slots into this power. That doesn't make me happy right there either. Bonfire, I was great. I love Bonfire, but it's woefully underslotted right here. This needs more. Could have got a lot more damage. I think if you dumped those hot feet slots down here, that would have paid off way better. Um, but obviously trying to build a lot of defense, you have to move slots somewhere. So here's, I guess, a power which you'd have to sacrifice. But the problem with that, of course, is it has a high endurance cost. It's 16 and a quarter for Bonfire. The recharge is 2 minutes. So if you're not slotting this thing, it's almost like, why do you have it, right? Because, yeah, you throw it out, but it only goes out every 2 minutes and it costs a bunch of endurance. So it needs slots or needs other bonuses in order to make it more useful. Fire shield, yeah, okay, fire shield. Does it really make a difference? Yeah, sure, more survivability, but whatever. I mean, I could have turned it off and probably just had as much survivability without it on. And then hover, I got a lot of use out of hover. I use it all the time. So this was good. Although I'm not sure about the knockback protection being, this is one other problem with hover being put way back here. You don't get your knockback protection, so you could hover, which is at 49. Well, by the time I hit 49, I needed a whole bunch of knockback protection way before that. So I would like to see this karma moved. And I might be getting ahead of myself because I'm going to kind of point out some things I would change, I get to the end of this video here. But that's just something that, the late game, it wasn't very, it was fine as far as, hey, I was doing all this damage, but you get to these levels, you think, oh, I'm going to get these new powers, but you're really not getting anything that you're finding useful or useful enough. You know, like bonfire, more slots, hover earlier, get that knockback protection earlier. Anyway, and then of course when incarnates get kicked in, forget about it. I didn't play a bunch of this. This was just when I was playing solo for the most part. But you bring muscular online, pyronic, reactive, assault, rebirth, your nemesis. I was melting stuff. It was crazy how much extra damage, the difference between incarnated and not incarnated. And I'm only tier threes in all these. You can go tier four, you get even better. But it was just a ton more damage. That was when kind of things were exciting again because you're unstoppable, just melting the whole map. You still have your mez problems, but like I noticed when I had my nemesis buddies out there, they pulled some of the aggro off me. So even though I got mez, they can heal me. They were pulling their aggro, so I wasn't just getting curb stomped. So this was definitely nice. I will say that I didn't find that the musculature radial endurance mod made a huge difference. Because that was one of the things I was hoping, because by the time I got to level 50, I was having a lot of endurance issues again. And the reason being because hot feet, weave, fire shield, and hover, you combine them all, they're like 1.2 endurance per second. And if you look at your total endurance bleed, it's like 1.9 or something. This was, the bulk of your endurance bleeding was right here, these four of these last five powers. So this is what made the late game really endurance heavy. So I was hoping that muscular radial with its endurance modification boost would help. It really didn't make a huge difference, you know, at least that I noticed. And at the same time, I might not have noticed this because I was doing a lot more damage and stuff was dying anyway. But I didn't feel like, wow, man, my endurance bar is never moving now. It was still moving. So anyway, but definitely incarnates, that's the stuff. If you're one of these anti-incarnate people, I don't know what's wrong with you. Go ahead and get them because you'll see how awesome they are. Probably OP awesome. They trivialize that level 50 content. But anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. Now, I've already kind of done some of this deep dive analysis, but I'm going to kind of go through this a little bit more, kind of power by power, or at least level range by level range. I already kind of mentioned this. Ring of Fire, you got to take it, right? And I think I slotted mine actually with a endurance and immobilize. I think this is what I did. Whatever. But anyway, it's terrible because of that shorter 20 feet. That's its biggest problem. Um, why? I mentioned this before in my intro video. In most of my builds, I don't take a true travel power anymore just because there's so many options with the free stuff, the pay to win. You've got jetpacks, you've got jump jets, you've got ninja run, you've got the teleports. Your team has team teleports. So I don't find a travel power very useful anymore. So for me, I think this was, I don't want to say a wasted pick, but it was like, okay, I'm taking a pick and I'm not going to use it 95% of the time. So I hate having powers like that. The ATO, the Blaster ATO status protection, I don't know that Fire Sword Circle's the best place for that. Because the point of it is to give you status protection and protect you from Mez. So you want to use whatever power it's in order to trigger it. But Fire Sword Circle, by its nature, opens you up to Mez before you can hit, because you're diving into a group who is seeing you coming a lot of times, and they might be firing at you and Mez you before you even reach them to activate Fire Sword Circle. And that happened to me a few times. So I'm wondering if it would be better, and maybe just the way I was playing, because I felt like I was opening a lot more often with fire. I tried to change this later as I was trying to learn the build better and trying to open with Fire Sword Circle, but I kind of felt like I need to throw something first. I don't know. So maybe it goes down here in Fireball instead, and you get a different setup here. I don't know. Just something that I was thinking about, maybe looking into moving that, put it into big blast like Fireball. Um, if you do that, you're gonna lose some of your defense, obviously. So where can you make up that ranged attack? Where could you move this artillery somewhere else? I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to finagle this out, but that was just something I felt like, man, I wish I could get this thing in a range power so it's triggering more often. I did a video on this too, the Numinas regen recovery. I don't think it's supposed to work this way. I don't, well, I know it doesn't work this way because I know if you put Numina's regen recovery in your health, it works just fine. It works at a passive and it triggers. But when it's in Cauterizing Aura, it was only working when I was in melee and that power is damaging enemies. So if I was out of melee not damaging, it wouldn't trigger. So you have to be in melee attacking, which maybe that's when you need it the most anyway, but out of combat it really doesn't do anything, or at range it doesn't do anything. So, maybe this needs to be moved to health, and maybe you need to put Panacea down in here to cauterize in order. I don't know. That was just something I was thinking about that was sort of a letdown. Hasten, it's hasten. What are you gonna do? Boxing, boring, whatever. Blazing Bolt, I loved the disorient bonus. I didn't think it was that gonna be that good, but I was stunning people a bunch with that proc. I like that. Consume, man, I wish this thing had more slots. Because again, I was running out of endurance slots, especially late game, and I only have one slot in here. And the recharge in this is 180 seconds, 3 minutes. That's a long time. Because I was averaging run times on a mission of like 10 minutes when I was soloing. Maybe a little bit faster on the incarnate runs. But anyway, if I go on slot, or even with the slotting, it's like 90 seconds. So, you know, am I only going to fire this thing off 4 times a mission out of something like that? Depending on how well it is slotted, which right now it's not. Again, I think on mine I made this accuracy recharge with one of these. Yeah, I think that's what I'd done. Accuracy recharge, like farm shifter. But anyway, it was just something. Tough is fine, steadfast, TP protection, blah blah blah. I can throw that in here. Here might be a place to put the karma, you know, because it comes earlier. I don't know. Inferno, um, yeah, this is fine. The other ATOs in here, fine. Burn, fine. Hot feet, I already mentioned this. I honestly don't think I got the value out of this power. Because either if I was standing at range, it wasn't doing any good for me. If I got mezzed, it got shut off. It wasn't doing any good for me. And there's a bunch of times where I got mezzed and I forgot to reactivate it because I was in the middle of some fight. And so I didn't realize it was off for another couple spawns. So it's an odd fit. It's great on paper if you keep it going. But it keeps getting shut off, which sucks. And then it kept fighting with hover, which sucks. Weave, I do not like having to sink 6 slots into this power at all. I mean, the defense on this is 5.61. And look at all the ED capping. I mean, you've got cap defense, so wasted. Endurance discount, wasted. Recharge on weave. I do not like that. Now I get why it's being done because you're trying to get some more defense. But here's sort of a side thing. I feel the chasing of set bonuses to cap something, which a lot of people do, they try to soft cap defense or whatever. The chasing of that to me makes the build weaker in a lot of cases because you're stealing 6 slots when one slot would be fine here. But the only reason you're putting 5 additional slots is because you're trying to get 2.5% range defense. Now, maybe that's what you need for capping, but I'm just thinking, man, if I take those 5 slots and put them somewhere else, I could put something in, combat jumping, which right now combat jumping is not slotted at all for defense. Put some there. Cauterizing aura, make that a better heal, better recovery power. Make consume a better, power. There's some slots for bonfire. So I could take these 4 slots or 5 slots and move them somewhere else and get more survivability than what that is doing for Weave. Because yeah, Weave is capped with its defense, but I could have moved something over here in combat jump and it made up that right there. And then I'm losing the 2.5%. I'm pretty sure I can get another 2.5%. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you where I can get more defense when I go to sort of my final thoughts on this build. So weave to me, that doesn't sit well with me. Bonfire, already mentioned this, needs more slotting. And fire shield's fine, Aegis, whatever. Hover, I don't like that it's the last power pick. It's probably one of your most useful powers. Just not even thinking about it, right? You're just hovering around, especially as a blaster. I would love this way earlier. Hell, I'd even put it here where fly is and put fly last if I had to pick fly. Right, I'd swap these two. Um, and and again, if I leave the karma in here, that would make sense. If I had it way back here, I'd have knockback protection all the way back here at level 8. But instead, I gotta wait till level 49. Yeah, I don't like that. And again, this is not a shot at the other builders or other people that have put out these, play their triple fire. I'm just saying for me, the way I experienced it, I really wanted that sooner. The only other things I kind of point out here is, you got your Panacea, hit points, and turrets. That was fine in health. The only thing I was thinking maybe that goes down here in Cauterizing Aura. The stealth I put in sprint. I thought that was very useful. The stamina, I kind of don't like 3-slotting stamina at all. That's another thing I'm like, man, what if I peeled off one of these and put it somewhere else? Is that extra couple, ticks of healing that useful? What if I put something like that down in Cauterizing Aura and made it a little bit better? You know. So just looking at that, that kind of made me like, yeah, it gave me some regen, but 6% regen, is that going to make a huge difference? An extra 0.3 hit points a second. Was that a difference between life and death? I don't know. Anyway, those are just some of my analysis. Stuff I liked, stuff I didn't like. All right. Last thing here to talk about is like, hey, what would I do, Big Mouth, as far as to make something better, right? That's what people want to know. So let me switch over to my side by side because I will answer that exact question. All right. I'm going to show you, after playing this build, how would I improve get this to fit better. Now, what would I do differently to make this work better? Let me hide this. Boom. Okay. Hold on 1 second. Make this thing smaller. So, the red one is build thoughts that I had. All right, hopefully you can see this okay. Okay, so blue one is the build that I started with that I got from Chelsea's post on the forums and with some incarnate input from Snarky's build. And then the red one is the build that I'm thinking would make this better. Now, what did I do? Why did I do it? One of the first things you're going to see is I've slotted Ring of Fire. I put 4 slots in it. Why? Well, this will help close that gap of attack chain at the early level. I put in there 3 damage procs: Apocalypse, the Javelin's Volley, PvP, and the Trap of the Hunter. This actually turns this into a pretty solid attack. It's lock in place here. With incarnates and stuff, it's doing 486.6. Okay, compare that to Fire Blast 389.1. So maybe actually I'll turn off the incarnates so you can see it a little more pure. Okay, so Fire Blast is 334. Ring of Fire 394. So let's do an extra 50 when those procs fire, if they all three of them fire at once. So it turns it into an instantly high damage attack. Not high damage, but equal or better than Fire Blast. Compare that to the original build. You know, here you've got the 332 for Fire Blast, but Ring of Fire is doing 275, and that's 7 ticks of damage. So that's 275 over a few seconds. With the 3 damage procs over here, that's more upfront damage. Boom, they're going to proc and fire at once. So it doesn't help with that range gap of 60 feet versus 80, but it does give the damage punch right up front. So even if I exemplar down, I've got a nice 1-2 pow pow punch right there. That was one of the things that I think would be an improvement. Now, by the way, the ideas I'm throwing out here are not going to completely redo the build, right? It's pretty much a few tweaks here and there. So, Ring of Fire, slotting it up. Now, hey, where'd you get those slots from? Well, remember what I said earlier? I do not like the 6-slotted weave, so I cannibalized it. I went with 1 slot, and I was able to move 3 of those right over here. Right? But hey, I just gave up some defense, right? Because I gave up the defense from weave itself, some of it, and then I gave up that set bonus, the 2.5% range defense. Plus, I gave up some recharge, 5%, and some damage, right? So I gave up some things. And I didn't gain anything by moving these things up through Ring of Fire. So, I guess I would argue I'm doing more damage now because the Ring of Fire is going to hit like a truck compared to, you know, the 2% global damage. Now, what else did I do to improve things? Again, my definition of improve. Well, the other thing I told you, I didn't really like picking fly with hover down here. So what I did instead is I got rid of the flight pool, and instead I went with concealment, and I took stealth, and I took infiltration. Infiltration, if you don't know, it's like a ninja run power. Now, by taking stealth, I've actually got the defense that I lost from the Red Fortune set no longer having 6 slots. And I was able to pop that Karma knockback protection here in infiltration. It's still a little bit late at 22, but it's there. Also, you'll notice I've regained the recharge I lost from the Red Fortune change because I threw a Luck of the Gambler in here. 2-slotted this thing. Right? 2 of them right there. So I got those 2 things back. Got the recharge and got some regen. Okay, so that's actually better recharge than I had, and I regained the defense that I lost from cannibalizing weave down here. Okay. Fire Blast is still slotted with Thunderstrike. Fireball is still slotted with Artillery. Fire Sword still has Makos. Rain of Fire still has Artillery. Fire Sword Circle still has the ATO. I didn't try to move that at this point. Aim is still the same. Combat Jumping is still the same. Build-up still the same. Blaze is still the same. Now here's my next change. Remember I was telling you about the problem I was having with Numina not working passively. Now assuming that's a bug in Cauterizing Aura, this might not matter then. But what I did is I took Numina and actually threw it down here in health where I know that it does work passively. Because I want that recovery firing. I don't want to have to be in melee to get it to work. And instead what I did is I took the Panacea that was in health and moved it up here to Cauterizing Aura. Now I haven't tested this yet, but my guess or my hope is that if it just happened to be a Numina thing, then I'll still get the hit points endurance to fire for Cauterizing Aura. Um, like I had it down here in health, but I'm gonna get the set bonus from 2 Panaceas, which is your recovery, whereas over here it's regeneration for Numinous. Because I feel the build's weakness overall was just the recovery endurance stuff. So this gives me a little bit more recovery rather than this over here. Okay. So that was another change I made. So now you start to add these things together, right? Red Fortune was taken out of Weave, so I did lose the range defense, but then I made it up with Stealth. I lost the recharge 5%, but I made that up with Luck of the Gambler and Stealth. I lost the 2% damage, but I feel like I made it up with Ring of Fire being more damaging. Then I'm losing some resistance, Smash Lethal, and Fire Cold, which I have not yet made up. But I did get some more recovery. All right, now I've got Infiltration instead of Fly, instead of Hover. Now, one thing I'm considering is maybe ditching combat jumping and taking Hover here. Depends on how much I miss the verticality of Hover. So I might do that and just, use this, what do you call that, proc there? That shield wall. So I could always throw that in Hover. Anyway, so I got Infiltration up here. It's got the Karma, like I said. So I've got my knockback protection much earlier than it was over here. This has been moved way up there. So I get it a lot sooner. Boxing is still boxing. Blazing Bolt's still the same. Consume, check this out, guys. Consume. Oh my gosh, how did I 6-slot consume with all of those obliterations? Remember my problem with Hot Feet? I don't have that problem anymore. I got rid of it. No Hot Feet, and I stripped all those so I didn't lose the set bonuses. I threw them into Consume. So I still have a damaging attack. I still have the set bonuses. I get them earlier, and Consume hits pretty hard now. I lock that into place. Consume's doing 237 damage, where up here, unslotted, it does 127. So almost double. And the other cool thing is the recharge, and this is down to under just about a minute. Where over here, the recharge was about 90 seconds. So I've shaved off about 30 seconds of recharge I consume. So that's almost at every spawn thing I can start, or every other spawn probably. Tough, I didn't mess with it. Inferno, I didn't change anything. Burn, I didn't change anything. Hot Feet, I got rid of. I also moved another slot over to Bonfire. Like I was saying, I wanted more slots. I just put one over here. I now have 2 slotted, which gives me a little bit more movement speed. And I threw in the knockback damage and recharge. It's not the best slotting, but it does get Bonfire to recharge a little bit faster. Over here, I was recharging in 58.5. Over here, I'm recharging at 51. The damage is a little bit better. 401 versus 365. So a little bit more damage over here. Weave has just got the 1 slot, just an endurance and defense. Fire Shield still has its slot. And then, hey, what power did I pick up when I dumped Hot Feet? I grabbed Melt Armor. Only a single slot in it. But because I am taking the Musculature Radial, that has a minus defense in it, it'll actually work with Melt Armor now. So I actually feel like I'm getting more from that Incarnate than I was before. So that's what you're seeing up here, just a single slot. It'll be useful for AV fights or, some big tough group of enemies. I can throw that down and melt their armor. Hasten, this is my last pickup. I moved it way down here to 49 because I think with the endurance issues I was mentioning, because I still think there's going to be some endurance issues, Hasten makes that worse because you're firing things a lot faster. I move it to last. I figure I'd have plenty of attacks anyway. I'm not gonna necessarily miss that I don't have hasten right away. So I put that down here at 49. Besides, I got a little bit more recharge with Luck of the Gambler. And if I really wanted to, I could put another Luck of the Gambler here at Infiltration if I was trying to get more recharge. So I moved that down there. Stamina I left with the 3 slots. I took the stealth out of sprint because I have it here now as a power, and instead I just went with endurance jump to kind of cut back at that endurance consumption again. Just kind of shave off as much as I can. So if you look at the totals now, here I think is where you'll see how this build is actually better. If you take a look, my defenses across the board are higher. So I know that was one of the things that Chelsea was wanting to go for. Look, range defense 48. I'm now at 52. Right? More defense. 18 AoE, 24. Melee 22, 6, 29. Some 5, 6, 7% more defense across the board. Everything has more defense now. The only place I had to sacrifice a little bit, smash lethal, and the fire resistances, I've lost a couple percent, actually 1.5% to be exact, which I think you can live with that considering your defenses are higher, right? The other big thing is, check out this, the recovery end drain ratio. Here it was 3.8 to basically 2, which is where that 2 to 1 thing I was talking about. Here I got the 3.8 again, but my end drain is 1.12. So I've got the 2 to 1 ratio that I want right here. Okay, boom, my recovery is a little bit better. My end drain's a lot lower than it was. The other benefit you're seeing is recharge is a smidge higher, 2.5%. Right there, right? So overall, what did I do? The 2 big things, I dumped Hot Feet because, like I said, it kept getting detoggled and wasn't very useful, I think. I've replaced it. Now, you might argue, hey, you lost a ton of damage. Well, did I? Because I'm getting more damage from Ring of Fire, which I can now throw that in my attack chain. And I turned Consume into a pretty solid PBAOE attack. So I think these 2 are going to make up for whatever damage Hot Feet was giving me anyway. I boosted my recharge a bit, so my powers come back a little bit faster. I should be able to fight longer because I've got a better recovery to end drain ratio. I've got superior defenses by 5, 6, 7% to what was in the original build. So that means I won't get hit as much, right? And then when you go ahead and turn on your incarnate stuff, I mean, it's just sick. My recovery is 4 to 6, so I'm going to be really not having any problems, I don't think, with endurance at all. You've got damage out the wazoo like I was doing already, but if you look at Consume as an example, Consume is going to be doing 312. The Ring of Fire is going to be doing 486. I mean, come on. Inferno is doing 1900. That's disgusting. Anyway, I mean, this build was already doing a bunch of damage, but so I'm trading. So basically, here's what I'm doing. I'm trading Hot Feet, and I'm trading Overslotted Weave for more defense, a useful Ring of Fire attack, better recovery, Consume coming back a lot faster, and it hits for damage. And I think the only question I have is this: does this make a difference or not? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I have to see. The other thing is, again, I could still do it. I could swap hover in right here. I'd have to test that and see if I, well, I have to play this and see if I miss hover at all. And then, only other wild card I think is still this. Is this the best place for that blaster ATO? Yes or no? I don't know. I could move it somewhere else. Well, maybe not. We'll see. But anyway, and again, I'm not criticizing the players whose build I stole, right? I mean, I used what they had posted, tested it, analyzed it, found where I see weaknesses, at least for my play style, and I put together this build. And really, the build that I'm saying here is not any different than what I had. It's pretty much the same price. The only thing that's going to cost you are those ATOs up there. Okay, right? The ATO, the purple, sorry, the purple and the PvP recipe. This is the only real added cost. Everything else, I just moved some stuff around. Right? I didn't do anything crazy. So to get this build done, I mean, I probably have these sitting in a bin already, but even if I had to go out and buy these things, it's probably, I don't know, like 30 million. I could go get these two in 5 minutes. And I think it's gives you a lot more improvement overall. You'll be able to better endurance, overall more damage, and better defense, which is I think what Chelsea and Starkey were going for anyway. And I want to thank both of those guys because their builds were what I based everything off of. So kudos to them to have the ideas in the first place. And that gets me to the last thing. Hey, would I keep playing this build at this point after going through all this? Well, first, I want to definitely try this. This is not going to take long to make this build. Test it a little bit and see how it works. But I will say this, from my play style, fire is a little bit too vanilla. Like it just does that one thing. I like builds that do more things, controls, debuffs, buffs, whatever. I love playing defenders and corruptors and dominators and controllers and stuff. Um, so this is, that hey, if I need something that's gonna go out and obliterate stuff. I mean, I'm really looking at this build more as a hitter farmer as opposed to, oh yeah, there's some mission or strike force or whatever going. I'm gonna go join it with this build. If I had to look at my stable of characters, is this gonna be the one I'd pull out to go play, regular stuff? Probably not. Just because it doesn't do a lot other than it just does a bunch of damage. And especially if I were exemplaring down, because even though I've improved it with the Ring of Fire, it's still going to be clunky at low level because just lacking that next attack until you get Blaze at 18. So let's say there's a Posse Task Force running or a Terracos, something like that. I'd have to, do I want to play this one? I know it's kind of clunky, low level. Probably find something else. But if someone's like, hey, I need, we just got to go blow up an ITF, or, we need to go farm something, any other hitters, and I feel like just annihilating things, I could pull this character off the shelf and just obliterate stuff. So yeah, that's where I think it'd be kind of fun. Let's see, anything else I wanted to say? Oh, the only other thing I wanted to mention was just the one other option, and that is the flares thing. I mentioned a few times. I know flares gets a lot of crap for, shit power or whatever, but it would solve some of these issues early. What could I do to get it to replace whatever? Maybe I drop Fire Sword. Because I didn't find myself using it that much anyway. I had all this other stuff going. So it was, like hit a boss with it type of thing. So I could easily swap flares out and do that and throw another Thunder Strike in there to get the range defense or whatever. So I wouldn't really necessarily miss having Fire Sword. Or I just think as a second build, you use it if you're planning on doing some exemplaring, put flares in your second build. or just as a respec build, like I was saying, if I was actually leveling this character from 1 to 50 the old-fashioned way, I would definitely have picked flares. And then probably around level 25, I would have looked to respec it out because at that point I would have had all my other goodies. Probably by 26, once I had Blazing Bolt, I could do that. Drop flares at that point. Anyway, again, I want to shout out to Snarky, shout out to Chelsea. I'm gonna appreciate. I tell you guys thanks for having the ideas here in the first place, and your guys' efforts to put together a build. Gave me inspiration to go ahead and do all these tests and then come up with again what I think's a little bit better. Again, no offense to you guys. You guys might look at my thing and think it's so crap. I don't know. But there it is. All right, appreciate you tuning in again, and peace out.